Right. Here we go. Welcome, everybody. It's so good to have you here. We are about to start this webinar. Oh, it's 11 on the dot my time. So let's just go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for making the time to join us in this amazing, wonderful, special presentation. It's one of the PERLA seminars that we're offering, the one for this year. And it's all about demystifying the publishing process. We have three amazing GeoLatinas co-hosts and leaders of various initiatives in the room. We have Daniela Navarro, Danita. We also have Julia Cisneros. I lost you, so hi, Julia. So we will be, hi, Diana, I see you waving. So we will be assisting you so that you can get the most out of this presentation. This is a space that you can treat as you want to foster the vibe. So ask questions, put them on the chat, interact with each other. We have two wonderful speakers and a third one will join us soon. I don't see Caro yet. And I'm gonna hand over the mic to Danita to introduce them properly. And then we'll get started with the presentation. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Rocio and I will see you soon.
Thank you, Rocio. Hey, everyone. Hola a todas. So I have the honor to present two amazing speakers for today's PERLA's webinar. Our webinar is titled Publishing with the Nature Portfolio, Demystifying Journals and Publishing Process. So I hope you enjoy with this webinar. So I'm going to present the first speaker, Laura Sinke. She's the senior editor for the Nature portfolio, working primarily with Nature Reviews, Earth and Environment. From next year, she will be the chief editor of Nature Reviews Clean Technology. And Laura has been a constant supporter of GeoLatinas since 2021, promoting GeoLatinas members' work via Tools of Trades series, which is a brief articles that showcase a technique that the GeoLatinas early career scientists use in their research. And in a personal note, Laura loves spending time with her dog, craft, and hiking. And then we have Dr. Alienor Laverner. Sorry if I mispronounced that. She has worked for 10 years in academic research before joining Communications, Earth and Environment in July 2022. She obtained her master's degree in climate and environmental sciences and completed her PhD in dendroclimatology, focusing on southern South America at the University of Paris-Saclay in France, and Ianigla from Argentina in January 2016. She has been working as a lecturer in geosciences in two French universities. She also joined the Imperial College of London as a researcher associate to develop her research in the field of climate change and terrestrial biosphere modeling. Before joining Spring in Nature, she worked for a few months at the University of Reading here in the UK. So welcome both, and you have the floor.
Oh, thanks so much, Daniela, and thank you, Rocio, and everybody for being here. I am so excited for getting to talk to you guys today. I've been following the work of the GeoLatinas and some of your work for a long time, and I think you guys are just doing really incredible things. So I'm very honored that so many of you have joined us. Today, Eleanor and I have a presentation. Like Rocio said, we were looking to try to demystify publishing a little bit, and what we'll go through hopefully will be relevant not just to the Nature portfolio journals, which there are a lot of, but also to publishing in general. Like we've said, this isn't super formal, so feel free to pop questions in the chat or to stop us and ask questions or clarify anything if you see something and aren't sure what we mean. And we will go ahead and get started. So I will share my slides. And presenter view. All right. Can everyone see me okay?
Yes.
Perfect. So, like I said, we'll be talking about publishing in the Nature portfolio today. We already had a fantastic introduction. So, Eleanor, are we happy to just skip our quick bios?
Yeah. Go
Perfect.
ahead.
Great. So, this will be a bit more interesting. Um, the first part of the talk I'll be presenting, and we'll be talking about journal selection. I don't think I have to reiterate to anyone that there are a lot of journals out there, a truly incredible number. And Nature also has a lot of journals, and they're all named sort of similarly, and it's not always clear which journal you should read, which journal you should submit work to, who publishes what, why they publish it. And I admit, even when I started working for Springer Nature, I had very little idea. It was all mystifying to me. And one of the things that we want to really try to clarify in this talk and this presentation is, how do you choose the right journal? Where do you go? One of the things, sort of step one, when you're thinking about what journal to publish with, is thinking about the actual story you're telling. How big is your story? Is it something that's really big and exciting? I mean, I would argue all research is exciting, but some research is like, oh, wow, this is groundbreaking, or this is going to change how we think about this, or this completely flips on its head something that we thought. Another thing to consider is, what audience do you want to reach? Sometimes you think that you just want to scream your work from the rooftops and everybody's going to be really interested in it. And sometimes you're like, I think this is really interesting and I really want other people, say, within the geosciences to read it, or I want other, say, paleo climate folks to read it. And then finally, how quickly do you want your research published? Ideally, everything would be published in a very reasonable amount of time. But to be honest, sometimes when you are publishing with, say, Nature, things just take a while. Usually, reviewers ask for a lot more. You're expected to essentially add more analyses to things, and that can take a longer than, maybe 6 months or so. I think the longest I've ever seen, I don't know actually what the backstory of this is, but there was a paper published in about 2018, and I saw it was submitted in 2010. Yeah, I'm not sure. It was an oceanography paper, so I'm wondering if what happened was they had to go on more cruises to get more data. But anyways, so that's something to consider. Some of the journals with higher impact factors, I know, are going to request more background data or more experiments than some of the journals that are maybe more specialist. This is a slide. There are some things I don't love about this slide in terms of putting things into a hierarchy, but you can think about the Nature journals in terms of their selectivity. So we have Nature, and everybody is familiar with Nature. I was at a knitting class the other day, and people knew what Nature was who weren't scientists. So Nature is very multidisciplinary, and it's staffed by in-house editors, and it covers some of your most significant advances, or the things that really make you say, oh, wow, and maybe have some public interest in them too. Below that, whenever you see a journal that says Nature and then blank and has either some sort of theme or a topic or a subject, those are what we call the Nature research journals. These are discipline or theme specific. They're also staffed by in-house editors, but they tend to be a bit smaller than Nature, and they really focus on publishing work within the theme or topic that they cover. They are slightly less selective than Nature, but they're more selective than Nature Communications, which I love Nature Communications. I both have worked there and been rejected by them. So I feel like I've seen both sides of the coin. And this is a journal that's very multidisciplinary. So it covers research from really all sorts of topics. Anything science related you can think of, Nature Communications will publish it. And it's also staffed by in-house editors. Then there are the communications journals, and Eleanor and Kara will touch on these more than I will, but these are the journals that are Slightly less selective than Nature Communications, but they cover a discipline or a theme. So in this case, we're highlighting Communications, Earth, and Environment, which I think will be relevant to a lot of people here. And then finally, we have Scientific Reports. It's another broad multidisciplinary journal, and it functions a bit more like, I guess, a typical journal. I don't know what a typical journal is anymore, but anyways, it is multidisciplinary and has an external editorial board. So just breaking this down a little bit, I'm hoping to clarify what different nature journals are looking for. So nature, like nature, as I tend to call it, they are looking for work that's reporting the most significant advances and the ones that have the widest implications. So things where ideally somebody outside the field will understand it. The example we like to give is a paper in biology should still be like, oh, wow, to someone in physics. I realize that we've gotten specialized to the point that doesn't always happen, but the idea is that the articles are written in a style and presenting work that is broadly interesting to anyone with an interest in science. So the Nature is the most selective of the journals here, and they don't proceed with a lot of articles that get submitted, but they publish some really interesting work, and they also have news and journalistic style front half. Or front half is just, sorry, it's a term that we use to essentially say like news stories, opinion pieces, and things like that. The research journals, what they're looking for, it's similar to Nature, but they're slightly less selective about the novelty and more selective about ensuring that an advance is reported that is interesting to everyone who would read the journal. So for instance, Nature Geoscience would be looking for papers that present research, say, in biogeochemistry. That would be really interesting to biogeochemists, but would also be interesting to a seismologist and vice versa. So the significance of an article or a finding should be relevant to anyone reading the journal, but not necessarily, say, to a physicist if we're looking at a seismology paper. Then there's Nature Communications, and this is where we start thinking about articles that are significant advances, but they influence the thinking of specialists. So just going back to biogeochemistry, because that's a topic I really love, an article, say, on methane cycling should be of interest to other people within biogeochemistry, but it doesn't necessarily have to be really striking to someone who's working on earthquakes. So novelty is slightly less important than at the other journals, like Nature and Nature Geoscience, but it's still important. So it means that of the articles that are submitted, about 30 to 40% are sent out to review. Again, just to humanize this a little bit, I've had papers desk rejected from Nature Communications where they've just said, not significant. So it happens to all of us. It's okay. I've been tempted to go back and read the notes on that one, but I haven't. I don't know if I could handle it. All right, the communications journals. These are a group of really great journals, including the ones Eleanor's from, and they are looking for papers that are slightly less impactful than Nature Communications. So things that are really interesting to specialists, but not necessarily something that's going to be of interest to someone in a different field or a different discipline. And finally, Scientific Reports. It's a multidisciplinary journal. They publish a lot of work. And here what the editors are looking for is work that's technically sound, but novelty isn't considered. So it's a great place to, say, publish confirmatory results or negative reports, anything like that. I think, oh, there we go. Sorry, I didn't realize these slides were slightly animated. I think the most important thing to keep in mind, though, when you're looking to choose a journal to publish with is really thinking about the story you're trying to tell. Writing a paper that people want to read and people can easily follow who haven't done the work themselves is really important. So after you've done that, usually we recommend writing your title and your abstract last. These are the things that will draw in people and that a lot of people will see first. So leaving them till last once you've had time to digest everything that you're discussing in the paper is usually helpful. We also recommend seeking feedback from other people. And these are people within your network too. So papers usually undergo peer review. Eleanor will talk about that process a little bit more, but sometimes constructive feedback from colleagues who aren't on your author team are actually really useful, and they can pick out things that you can address before you even have something submitted or sent to reviewers. And finally, we recommend, no matter which journal you use, to check the guide to authors and other journal articles and requirements. Luckily, a lot of journals are getting a bit more lenient, or what we call agnostic, about the style of an article, which is great. So you don't have to rearrange things. I don't even know how much time has been wasted moving method sections above and below results over time, but it's still worth checking to see sort of what journals are looking for based on their published papers. And with that, Eleanor will take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. So yeah, I'm going to talk about the editorial process and what happened when you submit a paper to one of our journals.
Eleanor. Oh, Eleanor. Before you get started, we had a question that perhaps is good to have.
Yeah.
And Laura refers to some stuff that you shared already. A very important question: what makes a paper impactful?
Oh, that is a, could take
We
the
can
rest
save it
of
to
the
the end if you want
webinar.
to discuss, but I wanted to make sure you saw that.
Yeah, no, that is a really fantastic question. And to some extent, that is going to, it's a bit of a weird, I don't know. I shouldn't say I hate the term impactful, but it's, how do I put this well? Essentially, it's articles that other people take notice of. So if the interest in having an impactful article is that everybody across, say, the science world, or even popular journalism or the world more broadly, are picking up on it, you can say a paper is really impactful broadly. I think sometimes if you see something get covered in a newspaper, for instance, that can be considered, oh, it's having a broader impact. But there's also in what impactful ways where articles will influence the thinking of others. So if an article is published and it inspires some other people to think, oh, okay, that's great. Let's actually go down this research avenue, or maybe we should start digging into this mechanistic process or something like that. That's another way to measure essentially an article as being impactful. There are different metrics that companies use to measure this. One of them is impact factor. There's also things like altmetric, which tracks engagement on social media platforms and I guess you'd call it popular news platforms. And I'm happy to chat about those later. But yeah, it's a bit of a amorphous term. Ekaterina, I hope, did that answer your question?
Hi, yes, it did a little bit. I'm just wondering, because like all the things you mentioned are things that any paper can do from any journal, like any paper like can influence the work of other people, or like yeah, but I was just wondering because I do know that like Nature publishes this like super like I don't know. I also have another question. Can I ask here, or should I wait for the Q&A? Yeah?
Yeah, go for it.
So I always heard that like the reason why Nature publishes impactful science, it's because there's basically a more careful processing of what gets inside. And you just mentioned that a very low percentage of papers go even to the reviewing process. They always usually get rejected super quickly. So like is it that it's impactful research, or is it that it's more crafted to think like, what is like this controversial topics or like this controversial discussions? So is it that like it is more carefully crafted on what an to interesting discussions rather than just like basic research that is also needed? So I'm thinking like, is it that it's more impactful, or is it that what's published, it's more carefully crafted than smaller journals that publish more, and therefore they may seem less impactful, but they just publish more and are less careful in what gets published?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. And that's something that has generated a lot of discussion over the years. So the idea with Nature and all of the journals that do this screening step for impactfulness, so Nature Geoscience, Nature Communications, is they're looking for things that are a certain level of advance over previous publications, basically. So if there's been a long-standing question in a field that's been impossible to answer, and somebody finally answers it using some new method or an innovative way to do it, or something that just frankly takes years and multiple like PhDs to answer and all gets wrapped up, that's something that usually like Nature or one of the other journals will be looking for. That is, I mean, it is a bit of a feedback loop, because when something makes it into a journal that's seen as higher impact, then people take notice. And, you know, if you're going through a table of contents with 10 articles in one issue versus 300 articles in one issue, you're more likely to finish skimming through 10 than 300. So it is a bit of a feedback loop, but all the editors who are doing this screening do read through the whole manuscript and look for specific, like really consider, okay, where's the advance here, and how does this fit into the broader research landscape?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on the editorial process. Next slide, Laura.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, what happens when you submit a paper to one of our journals? So what is important first to be able to make the paper attractful? I mean, it's impactful. It can increase knowledge in your field, and you are very proud of your paper, but you really need to convince the auditor first and be very clear in what is and how your paper will change thinking in the field. So you have to include a cover letter that is really targeted, that explains clearly and succinctly the importance and the context of your work, how it improve knowledge of the field in comparison with the literature. And you can also add some suggestions for reviewer or reviewer that you want to exclude. So you really want to be clear in the first place on what is important in your paper. Next slide. So for example, you have a kind of article that help you to draft this cover letter that you can find, for example, in Nature. Laura, I think you change. We cannot see the
Sorry.
presentation anymore.
Oh, I didn't realize it would change tabs. I was trying to link to the APC policy, but now I know. I'll stop doing that.
It's fine.
My
so
bad.
you can find like a manuscript that helps you to craft this cover letter. Next slide. So when you submit, so the chief editor is going to take over the manuscript. He will decide which editor that is working in-house is going to handle the manuscript. So the editor is the one that is more expert in the field. It doesn't need to be an expert in exactly your field, but it might be more closer to what you are submitting. And then the editor will assess the manuscript. So here you can see more or less a schema of the kind of different step that we are going to talk about just now. Next slide, please. So first, the editor is going to do an editorial review of the paper, is going to assess whether it's enough for the journal, if it's within the scope, if the results are important to publish, what has been done in the literature, and how this paper is going to contribute to the literature. So it's going to define the conceptual advance, if it's in interest for the community, and the importance of the research question. And we, as an editor, we also look at the data and the evidence provided. So if we see that it's very weak, so it's a very weak paper with a lot of very huge conclusions, we might not be very keen into sending out to review. Next slide, please. So in general, if we reject before sending out to the review, is because it's too specialized for the journal, for example. So as Laura said and explained, it really depends on your journal, where you are applying. It can also be because there is not enough advance and it's very incremental. It's basically saying the same finding that was being found in the literature. There is unclear conclusion and implication. So we really want to have a clear message and really want to see how your paper is contributing to the field. And there is also sometimes insufficient support for the conclusion. So the evidence is very thin. Next slide. So when we decide to send it out to review, we are going to contact experts in the field that cover different aspects of the paper, so they can have a different qualification. We try to find unbiased and balanced reviewer that are objective. So sometimes it happens that we receive reports from a reviewer that are very strong and not very scientific. So in that case, we will contact the reviewer and explain that this is not within the practice, and so that they has to be more objective, or we have to withdraw and remove this reviewer from the panel of reviewer. So we try to also use a large range of reviewer from different region, different gender and career stage. So it's something that's also difficult sometimes, even though we want to have the same amount of reviewer, women and men. It's not necessarily easy in that task, but this is something we are trying to do. And also to invite people from not only the global north and not only Europe and United States, but also from the global south, in South America, Africa, and Asia. Next slide, please. So after inviting the reviewer, we receive their report. And so we assess the report based on the criteria we had in the first place when we assessed the first manuscript, and we look at the actual arguments in on the review report. So basically, we look at what the reviewer think about the scientific robustness of the paper, to see if they find methodological flaws or not, if the novelty is actually proven, even from the side of experts in the field. But we do not specifically ask the referee to judge really if it's within the scope of our journal, because this is what we are assessing as an editor, and we don't actually count the votes. So imagining we have two reviewers that want to reject and one reviewer that wants to send it for revision, we are not going to reject the paper necessarily. We are really going to balance the arguments in the reviewer report and really see if the paper has potential still, how many revisions are needed and how long it might take. So some reason of rejection after the first round of peer review, but also after the second round of peer review, is the fact that there is not enough data set to support the conclusion, or the conclusions are too broad and not really actually accurate compared to the study that have been done. There are analysis data flowed, or for instance, it's not enough of such an advance to publish the paper. Next slide, please. So we ask the author to revise the manuscript and to address the major issue highlighted by the reviewer, but sometimes we could also give some editorial recommendation so that we help them to work on their revision. And so one thing that we think is important when we revise the manuscript is to be clear and concise and explain point by point, respond point by point to the reviewer concerned. It doesn't mean you have to agree with all the points highlighted by the reviewer, but you have to clearly explain and give a strong argument about what you think and why you think it's not accurate. You have to obviously stay professional and one thing that we have also to keep in mind is the peer review process is also here to really help you to improve the paper. So even though you can have negative feedbacks, it has always to be constructive, and in some way it's really improving what you are going, the end product of your paper. Next slide, please. So for example, yeah, we published in 2021 a comment, an editorial about what are good reviews and how reviewer has to write review reports that can be helpful as well to understand what we are looking for as a review report and what we are looking in their report to help the author to improve their manuscript. Next slide. So if your paper is finally rejected after 1 or 2 rounds of review, it's possible to have it transferred to another journal in the portfolio. So this is something that we implemented recently and that I think worked pretty well because you can, so editor from the journal that is rejecting a paper are actually, Laura, you changed the slide. So editors that are rejecting the paper are contacting editors from other journals to let them know that there is this paper that is still interesting, but maybe not exactly within finally the editorial bar of the journal. And so they try to ask them if they are interested. And based on this transfer consultation that we have, we can actually guide the author and let them know that if they want to transfer their manuscript to another journal, and specifically the journal in question, they will be able to send it back to reviewer. Next slide. So if you reject, you can still appeal. So if you don't even agree with the transfer, for example, or you don't have the possibility to transfer to another journal, you can appeal the decision, but you have to clearly state the reason why you are appealing, why you think it was not fair, for instance, or maybe why a reviewer, if it's based on the reviewer report, has not been quite as kind of a forget one part of the problem. So you have to really provide compelling arguments and compelling evidence to show that maybe we should reassess our decision. And so sometimes we tend to send back to reviewer because in general, the appeal, they are quite well done. Authors take some time to revise the manuscript and they really show why it's very important to publish the paper and why they can address the concern of the reviewer, but it's not necessarily always successful. So it's something to take in mind when appealing as well. So I'm just going to talk a bit about my journal, Communication, Health and Environment. Next slide. So as Laura said, we are a journal that are quite open. So we are interested in, of course, impactful paper, but we don't have the same editorial bar or other journal of the nature research portfolio, or for example, nature communication. So we usually target specialized researcher. And we are interested in a novelty, but we not at the extent of other journals in the nature portfolio. So we publish research about earth and environmental sciences. So it can be in geology, geophysics, geochemistry, terrestrial biosphere, ecology, oceanography, atmospheric science, and even social science. So we're really very broad and multidisciplinary. Next slide, Laura. So we are currently 6 editors. So Eike Langenberg is the chief editor and Joe Eislin senior editor. So the two of them launched the journal in 2020. And then we were added up in the team. So first Claire joined the team, then me, and then recently last year we also hired Martina and Carolina, which are handling manuscript on social science and solid earth. But our journal is very particular because we not only assessing ourselves manuscript, but we are also working with editorial board member, which has which are external editors, so people like you, researcher in the university that are interested in an editorial position. And so they basically handle a few manuscripts per month. And so we are working closely with them. They are not completely independent, but it's very nice way actually to open a bit our editorial team. So I wanted to leave Carolina Ortiz Guerrero, which just joined the journal, present herself, because you might know her. She's been part of the GeoLatinas community.
Yeah, thank you, Eleanor. And hi, everyone. I'm happy to be here as an active GeoLatina member. I just wanted to jump in the presentation and let you know I have just started working here. I'm a geoscientist. My major was in geosciences, my PhD as well. I do focus in solid earth topics as well as in science communication topics on the journal. And this is like one of my biggest interests, that is helping scientists to communicate their sciences in like formal and informal ways. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. And if you have any questions about like this career path, I am happy to receive any emails or just here in the chat as well.
And just to briefly mention, in QN, we will have a PERLA webinar or panel next year, where we will specifically talk about careers in publishing. And of course, Carolina will hopefully join us and a bunch of other people. So yes, stay tuned for a whole event on that. Thank you.
Great.
Next slide, Laura. So in our journal, it's quite open. So as I say, we are multidisciplinary, but we also an open access journal, and we are promoting open science. So we are actually asking all data to be available in the from the publication. So which is quite a change and different from other journal in the Nature portfolio. And we recognize each editor. So if you look at manuscript, you will see at the end of the manuscript exactly who handled the manuscript. They can be the in-house or the external editor. We also recognize reviewer. So if you are interested to review with us, you will be also mentioned in the paper. So we publish different contents. So high quality paper, as I say, in Earth, environmental and planetary sciences. We look at novel insights that changes thinking in the specialist fields, but we are still a bit more open than other journals of the Nature portfolio. Next slides. So we also promote the content. So for instance, if you see that a manuscript will have an impact, will be impactful and interesting for the broader community. So and we think that the press might be interested to cover it. We contact the press team and we to promote the publication of the paper. And for example, we recently published a paper about penguins. Maybe you heard it in the news, that has a very large coverage, mediatical coverage. That was a bit sad, but so basically in 2022, there was a very low Antarctic sea ice, and this led to the breeding failure of 4 out of 5 colonies of emperor penguins. And so it had a lot of courage, and that was also because we tried to release press release to the press before publication. Next slide. In our journal, we also publish perspective and review articles that are much more trying to address a specific question and see how the literature is actually answering this question. And we also publish comments, which are short pieces where that can be opinionated, where some ideas can be discussed in a more open set. Next slide. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact us, feel free to contact Carolina as well, and we would be happy to answer them.
Great, thanks, Eleanor. And I'll just go through nature reviews very quickly. There's a slide that I want to get to because it's something that I think we're all really proud of and excited about. So I'm from Nature Reviews, Earth and Environment. We publish reviews and perspectives and opinion articles across the earth and environmental sciences. So if you guys have any questions or any review ideas, you can always reach out. We really sit beside and separate from the other nature journals. So the Nature Reviews portfolio, we're kind of our own little bubble in a way. And some of the ways that we differ from the nature research journals is instead of publishing, we'd say primary research or research that's new, Nature Reviews journals really focus on publishing reviews that summarize topics and provide a really good resource. Something I always tell authors when I'm working with them on reviews is make this the review you would want to read as a graduate student. And I think that's our goal with every review. The process at Nature Reviews is a little bit different. We essentially are just a lot more hands-on. A lot of the articles we publish are commissioned, but we also have some fabulous proposals that we end up publishing. And us editors really help with the writing and the editing process a lot more, which is great. So we help with developing article ideas, developing the structure of the article, and then helping to edit the article to make sure it's really clear to even non-experts. We also have figure editing and art support, which is my favorite part of the job, I think. We can take even hand-drawn figures, and our art editor, who actually has a background in geology, which is great, will hand draw articles from sometimes very rough sketches. We have a few examples here, which, yeah, are really interesting. But yes, so publishing with us, if you have any ideas, please feel free to send us proposals or to submit any. And if an article is already written, submit the already written article. We're really happy to read through. If you're thinking about writing a review, then send us just a short outline with the title of an article, who will be writing the article, some of the key messages, why we need the article, and the outline for it. Now, something that we're really passionate about at Nature Reviews Earth and Environment is involving people who are maybe earlier in their career. I think we often think of reviews as being written by somebody who's a full professor somewhere, has been around for forever, but they're not the only ones doing science. We would argue most of the science is getting done by early career researchers. So we started an article type called Tools of the Trade, and we've been so happy to be collaborating with you guys to write Tools of the Trade articles. I think I see some of our authors here, which is amazing. You guys have all been so good. And what these are these are single page articles. They're usually 250 to 400 words written by one person who's usually a graduate student, sometimes also a postdoc. And what you'll be discussing is a method or a technique or an instrument that you use in your work. You tell us what it does, how it's used, why we need it, essentially writing an article that is meant to convey what this tool is to people who aren't even geoscientists. We like to use it as a good introduction to publishing for early career researchers. I know publishing can be really intimidating, but we want this to be a positive experience. And it's a really good way to showcase your work. So we are always looking for people to write. We'll send around the link again. I know Rocio's shared it before for submitting ideas to us. And yeah, we would love more ideas. And yes, also, it's great. We can host Spanish and or Portuguese translations if you'd like. So we're hoping that this is accessible to people who aren't just native English speakers or fluent English speakers. Yeah, and this is for the GeoLatinas collaboration. So we're really excited. Send us your ideas. And with that, we are really happy to move on to questions. Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura and Eleanor. So I'm going to catch up some previous questions. And actually this question about the processing charges. So Natalia was asking about that, the article processing charges, and if you have a waiver policy for low-income researchers.
Yeah, Eleanor, do you want to?
Yeah, just to mention, when you submit your paper, you can actually ask to waive the fees. So usually it's been done at the beginning, during the submission process. But if you already submitted your paper, you forgot to ask to waive the fees, then you can still ask during the peer review process. And this will actually, so as an editor, we are not going to make a decision on this. It's going to be the team in charge, the waiver team, that is going to make a decision, but we obviously be based on where your institution is. So if you are in the global south, or for different reasons, they may waive your fees. So you have this possibility.
Okay, great. And Julissa asked, what's the difference between the in-house editors and the externals?
So the difference is that, so the in-house editor are full-time editors, so they are going to assess many manuscripts. They are working in the same office, and the job is really to look at the editorial process, while external editor are researcher, professor, postdoc, not PhD students, but at least postdoc, that are interested, that want to be involved in the editorial process, and that want to have an experience. And so the difference is that they're not going to have the same amount of manuscript to assess. So for example, in our journal, they assess only maximum 3 manuscripts per month. So of course, the workload is slightly different.
Right. Diana asks, is reaching an editor prior submission a common practice? So she's like, for example, hey, is this abstract work something you would like to see?
Yeah,
I think it really depends on the journal. So yeah, Laura, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to see what Eleanor says. Yeah, I think it depends on the journal. I usually recommend just submitting the article, because then the editor will see the full picture. Sometimes there are things in there that maybe don't come out in the abstract, where it's like, oh, that's actually really cool. And this is, I hate to admit this, but if you actually submit something through the submission system, the editor is less likely to lose it over email. I think we all miss emails, and that's the one risk. But yeah, definitely. I mean, editors are always happy to hear from the community, so feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions. But I say go ahead and just submit your work, and we try to get back to everyone really quickly with an initial out to review versus this isn't a good fit decision. So there's not much to lose, I think.
And if you send an email as well, it means that we are not going to fully assess your manuscript. So we may say, yeah, that's exactly within the scope of a journal, but we are not going to tell you, yeah, we're sending that to review. We will do a full assessment if you submit.
All right, understood. Fabiola asked, could you share with us, in your view, some examples of recent papers you have reviewed, the elements that make a paper broad enough for Nature Communications? I get some sense from looking at the table of content and reading some of the papers, but it might be insightful to hear from editors' perspectives. So the question is basically, share your view from our samples, papers you have reviewed that make them good enough for being published in Nature or Nature Communications.
Ooh, that's a good question. So, and Eleanor, feel free to jump in. I think some of the papers that I remember at Nature Communication saying, yes, I think this is a really good fit, were ones where if there was a debate in the field that hadn't been solved, and, the field had gone back and forth and people weren't sure, And then there was a paper that definitively said, here's this missing piece of evidence, we've solved the debate. That's something that we're always really interested in. At NatComs, we are also interested in articles where maybe we had a bunch of observations of something, but we didn't know the mechanism or the process behind it. And if there was a paper that actually went in and did the detailed explanation for why we've been seeing some maybe mysterious observations or just observations we're not sure about, then that's something that's a good candidate for, say, Nature Communications or one of the other journals.
Yeah, and maybe to complement, I think if you found something interesting that has been already reported in the literature, or very similar, slightly different, but very similar, it might not be a good case for Nature Communication. But if you find a better mechanism for a specific question, and you also highlight some new insights, in that case, you might be more successful.
All right. And Rosa, do you want to pick up Paula's question?
Sure. I also had a question that came via PM. They were asking about the tools of the trade specifically for GeoLatinas, and then it's related to Paula's as well. So can someone who graduated grad school early this year can submit? And from my understanding, yes, even up to postdoc sometimes. However, for the GeoLatinas collaboration, we might already have all of the ones, is one per month. So I'm gonna share the link in the chat. Laura, Alieno, Caro, if you want to share something about it. But just stay tuned with that collaboration. And if maybe, Paula, if you filled out the form from the journal website itself, not as part of the GeoLatinas, collaboration itself, just mention somewhere in your interactions that you're a part of GeoLatinas, and maybe they can put your article also in that special portal for GeoLatinas articles, and then that might increase the visibility for that one as well. Laura, you may answer that question better, but I'm going to put the links now. And go ahead, Laura, if you have any insights.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, that timing is not a problem at all. Please go ahead and fill out the form. I'll admit we do plan on sending feedback. That is our plan. I just have been a little bit snowed under. So yes, it's coming. We were just letting the submissions come in, and then so please go ahead and still submit ideas, and we will assess those, figure out which ones are a good fit. One of the things is sometimes we get really good ideas, but they're just really similar to something we've done in the past year or two. So I recommend checking through what's been published in the past couple of years and seeing if whatever you're describing has been done before. And if it has, we could potentially still go ahead with it, but it would need maybe a different application because we're just trying to have lots of different tools that we cover. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for submitting your ideas. And I am very sorry if you've been waiting to hear back. That is all on me.
Thank you, Laura. I just put in the chat the direct link for the rest of the members can just check all the articles of GeoLatinas, a tool of trade, if you want to check it out. I'm one of the authors. It was an amazing experience with Laura. Comparing the draft I had with the final version, it was a learning curve, definitely in terms of using the appropriate sentences and words to just deliver a message for the general public, because it was a little bit more technical, the first draft. And then anyway, so you would definitely enjoy the process. So feel free to just register to the form.
Anita, we are almost at the top of the hour.
Yes.
And Diana raised her hand. Why don't we take Diana's question? Julia, maybe you want to take over for this special gift to our speakers and presenters. And we have some cushion time, as long as the speakers can stay, to maybe have a few more questions past the top of the hour, but just to make sure we get to all of the points. So go ahead, Diana, ask your question.
Okay, thank you all for the all the background that you give about how important is starting thinking about what we want to write and what is important for the review and the public. My question is related to how before, if you have a discipline that is like part of proxies or different disciplines, and before people can do a publication just with one discipline. But now, because it's more complicated, and they want have integration of multiple proxies. In your experience, is okay now to do a publication with one proxy or one discipline, or is definitely better try to put together the three or more disciplines to do a good publication? Because it's very hard to get in the same level, in the same point, the idea with other people. So how is now that way?
I would say it still depends on the journal you are submitting. So for instance, in our journal, we will be still interested if you are presenting one proxy, but you are showing something new. I don't know if you are doing a reconstruction, climate reconstruction for the past, and you are using a different biomarker or different proxy that has not been really used for this application, then we are very interested. If it's exactly confirming what we already know, it might be not necessarily adapted. But if, for example, you have many sites, many data, the same proxy, but a different site, we might be interested because of the intercomparison. So it really depends on your
Okay.
paper and what you are showing.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you all for your time spending with us. And as a token of our appreciation, Laura and Alianor, we just wanted to say thank you so much for spending the time that you have today, giving us this information and empowering us to feel better equipped as we pursue the publication process. And hopefully you're going to see a lot more GeoLatinas in the nature space. And with that, we wanted to share these certificates that you can use or you know, just to remember our appreciation. So this is a certificate of appreciation to Alianor for sharing with our community your time, energy, and your knowledge as a guest speaker. And we have another certificate for Laura. We want to say thank you so much. We really appreciate the time that you spent, and this information has been so valuable. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll be sure to send this to you.
Thank you, Julia. I put a little bit of the agenda, and we're gonna retake some questions. While you prepare your questions, raise your hands. We would like to open a brief space for maybe some words of wisdom. Perhaps Laura, Alianor, you would like to share something. Caro, you as well. Anything you want to share? Keep it brief, and we after that we'll go to the co-host in case you want to share any words of wisdoms, and then we'll retake some questions for a few more minutes. I see Caro, you raised your hand. Laura, Laura, Alianor, you can go right after Caro. Go ahead, Caro.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share something that I came to know just as I started working as an editor. So literally, I'm new in this job. It's been only 2 months, but for example, something that I found really interesting is that editors also attend scientific conferences. This was something that I didn't have idea about when I was a graduate student or a postdoc. I never met an editor at a conference. So it's something that you can also keep an eye on. So normally editors go there to, you know, grasp what is like the science topics that are right now like being talked in the scientific community, and also meet the scientists. And if there are interesting topics, sometimes we also ask authors to make submissions to our journal. So I'm really excited about that option. Next year, Alianor, Laura, and I would be attending conferences, and you can also check where we're going to be in the websites. They're normally there. And yeah, just like I think that it's amazing, a way to approach and also like ask these sort of questions that you have asked in here, but maybe like in person. Sometimes it's nicer. That's it.
Yeah, in conference to complement is also a good moment to share and to talk about your paper if you really want to publish with us and explain a bit more the findings and what is your approach, and we can give you some advice and how you can improve your paper as well. So it's really like a nice way to exchange ideas as well.
All right, thank you, Elena. Laura, would you like to say some words of wisdom, something else?
Yeah, I always feel bad calling them wisdom. I don't know how wise I ever am, but I just want to say, don't be afraid to just go for it. I think there's first at any publication, like all the work you're doing is really great. So it's not just about which journal it's in, but also don't be afraid to take chances and just submit your article to a journal you think it would fit in. Just go for it. And the editors were not scared. Okay, we seem like we might be scary over email, but I think we're all just really passionate and really excited about research. And a lot of us got into research for the same reasons you guys did and got into editorial because we love research and we love scientific communication and we love working with the community. So don't be afraid to reach out to us, ask us questions, just anything really. We're excited and we're here to help.
Right, thank you, Laura. There's one last question from Yvonne. She says, I'm wondering if you have seen people using ChatGPT for scientific articles.
I'll say I haven't yet, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them soon.
I mean, the idea is not to use ChatGPT when writing an article, but we know that that's also a tool that is being used now. And so it's not something we can really control, but we will, I mean, we are not very in favor, I would say.
I have a following question because, for example, here in the University of Leeds, they are like doing like updating guidelines in research and also teaching using AI technology, whatever. So I was wondering if the journals are also going to update their policies about for the author to say that they're using AI, such as ChatGPT or something. So I don't know, have you had that type of discussion in Nature?
Yeah, there are guidelines that I think are public now that essentially say articles shouldn't be written with ChatGPT. If there are methods that use it, ooh, that's an interesting one.
I think if you use methods based on ChatGPT, but that is kind of elaborate, it's something that is feasible, but you have to clearly explain that you use ChatGPT, what you did. So it has to be transparent, at least. But definitely writing a paper with ChatGPT is not recommended. And yeah, we are not really optimistic about it.
Right, thank you. Is there any more questions of the audience? You can raise your hand or just type in the chat.
Well, people work up the hands up. Just a friendly reminder that GeoLatinas has many initiatives, and one of them, we have a virtual office where we can co-work and co-write together. So if you're writing an article, you're not sure, and you need some focus time, you can join this virtual space. We're all muted, but we are with very good energy together, sharing our goals and just energy to push a goal through and maybe finish that one article. You can do all sorts of things, not just write. Some people read, some people grade. It's really up to what you need to focus on. Some people color. It's really up to you. You will see people with microscopes picking. I know Diana was just there. And everything, all the access to all of the initiatives, including webinars like this kind and anything else, is all done via Slack. Join that space. If you have problems or questions, just go ahead and let us know via email. You have received emails as reminders for this one webinar, so that's one way to contact us. And thank you so much for being here. I don't know if you are now any more questions. We can take a quick picture if people want to open their cameras, and we have some faces in there. So if you would like to be in a picture and we can post it online. I know we still have some people. Oh, I see some faces. Look at Mocha. I see you all. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Aliena. Oh, I hear a phone. It's almost lunchtime here. You must start hearing me going, we need to eat. Turn on your cameras. Turning on your cameras, I will assume that it's okay to post your picture and tag you on LinkedIn if we recognize the name or find it on the profile. So anybody else, this is the time. Prendan sus camaritas para tomarles fotos, y si le vemos ahí con la camarita prendida, entonces significa que podemos ponerlas en la internet. Listo, ready, 1, 1, 2, 2. I'm gonna confuse the numbers, and 3. Smile, cheese. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Anything else to share? Daniela or Danita, Julia, Laura, Caro, anybody? All right. We'll see you online. Have a good one.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
Laura. Thank you, Aliena.
Bye.
It was so lovely. We'll be seeing you soon.
See you all.
Hi.
Adios.
Oh gosh, I continue recording this. It's all
I'll
right.
stop recording this.
It's all right.
Rocío, you
Sí.
need to add my picture.
I don't have you. Let me take one and I will put your face and collage you somewhere, somehow. There you go. I'll take another one. Big smile. 1, 2, 3. Cheese.
que voy a poner pantalla y Gelatina Santander.
Ríe,
Muy
cheese.
bien.
Sí, ¿verdad que sí? Listo. Thank you
Ya,
for
yo
being here.
me voy al
Gracias.
ímpetu. Bye bye.
Bye.
Yo me voy después. Bye. Bye bye.